Hello and welcome to the Artists Forum. I'm Scottie Gage. Today's episode is a two-part segment based on women in the arts. The first segment consists of a group show entitled Hoes, Putas, and Dragon Ladies, Our Sexuality ReMixed, and is a multimedia exhibit featuring performance, visual art, and readings that celebrate Women's History Month. Curated by Abiola Abrams and Sonia Malfa, this exhibit was created as a commentary of the sexual representation of American women of African, Latin, and Asian descent.
This exhibit is called Hoes, Putas, and Dragon Ladies. And those are three derogatory terms for women of color in a sexual sense. So the full name of the exhibit is Hoes, Putas, and Dragon Ladies, Our Sexuality ReMixed. And it's an exhibit about women of color's sexuality and sexual representations. And we're at the Chashama Gallery in Midtown Manhattan. There are 7 different locations that they have throughout the city, and this is the 44th Street location. My name is Abiola Abrams, and I'm the curator of the exhibit along with Sonia Malfa. And I originally conceived of the exhibit a few months ago as a means of reclaiming our sexuality as women of color. The reason why I originally wanted to do the exhibit is that I live in New York City, where you walk past a newsstand and it's all naked, naked women of color. And I feel embarrassed, I feel exploited, I feel naked when I walk by these newsstands. Usually somewhere in the vicinity of a newsstand is a gentleman making some kind of lewd remarks toward you. So I was feeling like that the time was really ripe for this exhibit, because we're at a place where women of color our bodies are so prominent in the media. We're very much depicted as over-sexualized and over-sexed. And it's like everywhere you go, you see these representations of our bodies, but you don't hear our voice within it. And it's really important, I think, it's critical that we reclaim a place of not only of having a voice, but a place of sexual joy in communities that have been exploited. Because it can become a really dangerous place where we start to believe that, okay, that is exploitive and embarrassing to me, so that sex or sexuality is wrong. When we have those beliefs, then we come to a place where we are now, where, say, in the African American community, teen pregnancy is running rampant, that HIV and AIDS are the leading causes of death for African American and Latin women in my age group. And it's because we've come to a point where the way that we're portraying sexuality makes it so that thinking people don't want to talk about sex. And then we, say that, well, sex is a bad thing. It's not that sex is a bad thing. It's that the representations that we see are damaging. So the first thing that I do whenever I see a sexual or sexualized image is find out who made it and why. What are they trying to say? That's how you distinguish between something that's an exploitive image and an image that may have something else to say. I'm a firm believer in helping to give a voice to the voiceless. I'm also a firm believer in helping to create other avenues for people to express themselves and show their work. So for me, a lot of my work is about, I'm a writer, a director, and a TV personality. A lot of my work is about creating work that I want to read or creating work that I want to see. So, there's usually, we all experience a moment when we go, well, why doesn't somebody do this or that or the other? Wouldn't it be great if someone, did these kinds of things? So for me, that wouldn't it be nice if was, gee, it would be great if there was somewhere where I could go to see emerging artists of color from different backgrounds who come forward to kind of reclaim and reassert their sexuality. So for me, that's only the beginning of a conversation. That's not the end of a conversation. Why doesn't somebody, the somebody is us. The we is me. We're the ones we've been waiting for. There's no, them that's going to come in and do it. So that's why I wanted to do this exhibit, and that's why I did this exhibit. And it was wonderful to be able to work with these women and give them a venue in Midtown Manhattan. Like I'm so proud of all of their work and humbled, frankly, by their work. So what is really striking to me, first let me just preface this by saying, it's interesting, a few years ago I contacted Urban Envy. I went to her website. She has a very strong web presence. She's a web designer, for those of you looking for websites actually. And I went to her website and read her artist statement. And that's why it's so important for us as artists or people who are academics or people who have things to say to have a web presence, because you never know how people might find you. And I was so struck by her artist statement that I kind of wrote her a fan letter. I said, you know, I just read your artist statement on your website and I was very struck by the things that you had to say, and thank you, basically. And she wrote me back and we kept kind of loosely in touch and started to work on a comic book project together in conjunction with another project that I was doing. And she was one of the first people that I thought of actually when I wanted to do this exhibit. The striking thing about her work, if you look at it, is that, you know, we feel like we're looking at an oil painting and we're looking at brush strokes, but it's all digital. It's all digital. And, you know, clearly she's an artist with a very strong voice and very strong aesthetic and very strong training. But I just think that this is just such a fascinating way to use the digital medium. If you look at this work over here and this work over here, like just the differences in how warm this is with the cold things that it's saying, it's just very striking to me. And especially because a big part of this exhibit is about remixing sexuality. That to me is what her work is about. It's about remixing the voices and the portrayals of Asian and Asian American women. So if you look up here, this is for me one of the most striking parts of the exhibit. And the filmic quality of her work is also really strong for me as a filmmaker. Immediately when I looked at this, I said, have you worked in film or video? And she's about to do a film or video project. So that I'm really excited about and I can't wait to see. So this is the work of Liliana Velasquez, who in my imagination I'd like to think I kind of discovered, but Liliana is a force of nature and no one can discover her. She's like, you know, the sun, like she was just there. Liliana is an actress. She's a performer as well as a visual artist. She's been in 2 of my film projects. And this work is really, really interesting because if you look at both of these, the bigger pieces, you see the cellophane that's been painted on with acrylic, I believe, and then a series of smaller paintings in the middle that range from like a very explicit to, you know, sort of just really like beauty shots, kind of. And she creates this work by wrapping an assistant in cellophane, who I believe is usually a woman, but maybe she works with men as well. And then she paints on it based on what she feels like their body is saying. So she's literally taking the body of these women and putting it on canvas. She's of Colombian descent. And there's one piece that she did that was a means of healing for a woman who had had a miscarriage, kind of cocooning her within this cellophane. And Liliana also did the piece by the front door. And on opening night, she did a live performance in the window of this Midtown gallery as a dominatrix, you know, mixed with a tango dancer. She's got a dance background as well, wrapping this woman in cellophane and painting on her body. And it was certainly a sight to see. Now this artist I'm very proud to showcase. This is done by Damali Abrams. My sister, actually. And if we look down here, we'll see that this is actually an altar. In Damali's work, a big part of it is about creating altars. And usually this would have candles on the side of it, but we couldn't do that in this space. And it's also collage. If we look here at this and up here and over here, it's about taking these images which are from these popular magazines that for us as women a lot of the time define on how we look at ourselves. You know, we look at these magazines and it says, you know, large size women like Beyonce and J-Lo, and you know, which is ridiculous because all these women are about a size 4. So she takes those images and kind of recrunches them, remixes them, which I think is a big part of the work in my generation because we all grew up listening to hip hop, kind of remixing things. We saw that in Urban Envy's work, seems very strongly hip hop influenced to me as well. And music video influence. It's a big part of the way that we came, our way of seeing, our way of coming into the world. So that's what Damali's work is, and she's got, you know, some totems and that sort of thing. And for me, it was really important that we couldn't have this exhibit and talk about sexuality without somehow talking about spirituality. And last Sunday, we turned the space over to Casa Atabex Ache, which is this Bronx-based women's safe haven group that works with a lot of sexually exploited young women. And they came in and they blessed the space and they did an empowerment workshop that for me is about a big part of what this work is about. Damali also curated for us last Friday. She does an exhibit and she does a presentation called Bless the Mic, which is an open mic traveling gig in the city that a number of different artists come and perform hip hop and that sort of thing. And she did that last Friday in this space and performed with 2 or 3 other performers, Shadaga, her partner, being one of them. And actually it was interesting because that's the only complaint we got from the neighborhood, that they were in here doing spoken word poetry and hip hop, very positive hip hop about empowering yourself, and people across the street threatened to call the police. So very interesting. So that's Damali Abrams. So when I look at this work, this is the work of Ifetayo Abdus-Salam, who is our youngest person in the show. She's 23 years old, recently graduated from NYU. Damali went to NYU as well. And the thing that strikes me when I look at her work, if you look at Devorah's work and you think of Anais Nin, to me, I look at her work and I think Audre Lorde. I think there's an Audre Lorde quote that comes to mind: if I didn't define myself for myself, I'd be crunched into other people's expectations of me and eaten alive. And for me, that's a big part of looking at Ifetayo's work. These are all self-portraits. This is the artist herself in each of these pictures recreating popular imagery of an iconography of African-American women. And it's even interesting the way that she chose to display it. If we look over here, we see some African images from the 19th century, ranging from this woman up here to the Hottentot Venus down here, who was kidnapped from South Africa and displayed in a museum because of her large behind and unusual body shape that they weren't used to in Europe. And actually they held on to her remains until a few years ago. They finally, I think 2 years ago, released her remains to Nelson Mandela for her to have a proper burial in South Africa. So I thought that that was very interesting that she chose to include this work, and the way that she presented it was like a totem, very similar to the way that we presented Liliana Velasquez's pieces, smaller pieces. And then if you look at the other end of the exhibit, it's like she's telling a story starting with those images, going through her, and ending up with these images over here, which are the images that she's copying. Foxy Brown or Pam Grier, you know, the kind of black exploitation image of the strong, tough black woman, which, you know, was very empowering, but at the same time was very damaging, because we have this image in our head of the strong black women, and so many of us feel like we've got to be this strong, tough black woman. It's what happens when art and life tend to get, you know, circular, and that a lot of African American women don't feel that they have the right to get help when they need it in different ways. And then we have this image here that's a replication of the Dorothy Dandridge image. And she's got Josephine Baker over here. And then the last two are the rappers, Lil' Kim and Trina. I had a very interesting conversation with a gentleman on opening night who was an older white man who is maybe about my father's age, maybe about 65. And he came in, he gravitated immediately to this picture here on the end, and he said, "Trina!" He said, "That's the Trina image." And he said, "Oh, you know, I'm familiar with Trina. The name of her album is," I don't know what it is, but it was something like "My Big Bad Ass" or whatever it was. And then I was standing here with Sonia Malfa, who's Puerto Rican American, and a friend of mine who is an actress who's African American. And I said, wow, I said, I would gamble that none of the three of us were aware of that at all. And I asked them, and they weren't, because we don't patronize Trina or have anything to do with her work or support her work. And what was interesting is that he said, you know, that he loved Trina, he loved her work, but then he didn't understand the exhibit. He said, I don't understand what you're trying to say. I don't understand what the problem is. And I said, well, probably if you're a fan of Trina's, you probably wouldn't. And you know, it was funny. We were talking and having a conversation. I said, well, what is it that you think? And he said, well, I think that black women are just, you know, very strong women and very sexy and very sexual, and you know, I don't understand the problem with that. And we tried to have a conversation for maybe about 4 or 5 minutes, and then I said, I understand that you don't understand, and I'm fine with that. That I don't feel any obligation at this moment to try to convince you or explain anything to you. Feel free to look around the gallery and draw any conclusions that you wish. Good luck to you. So yeah, so this is that work. So this painting over here is by Nancy, let me get her last name, Encarnacion. Nancy Encarnacion did this painting over here and the one over there. And she came to us through Jennifer Fuentes, who is one of our artists, Nancy is a student of hers who was a teacher and just started painting now late in her life. I believe she's in her 60s, or early 60s, or late 50s. And she just now started to paint. And this was her very first painting ever. And that's her work. And this is a piece by Jennifer Fuentes, who does large-scale oil paintings, but had to take her work away earlier than we anticipated. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's more critical than ever at this time in our history that people who are quote unquote oppressed or marginalized or any of those labels that we tend to apply to ourselves come together in order to say what we're saying. Because, you know, a big part of a way that you keep people weak and keep them marginalized and keep them oppressed is by keeping them separate and having them all believe, well, you know, that Abiola, you couldn't possibly have anything in common with Urban Envy, or you couldn't possibly have anything in common with Liliana Velasquez because you're from these different backgrounds and she's this and you're that and whatever those things are. So it's really, really important if we look at what's going on around us that we all come together. It's a really interesting time that we're living in where you see corporate entities coming together, yet people becoming more polarized, individuals. You see, you know, the corporate entities are merging right and left, realizing that there's power in coming together. There's power in different and disparate voices joining together. So it's important for us as individuals to realize the same thing and to not only talk about it, you know, like we say in the hood, don't talk about it, be about it, you know, to come together and dialogue and see what we have to say and see and find that we often have more in common than different.
Our second segment focuses on the work of Japanese-born artist Toshiko Nishikawa. Her exhibit, Senbazuru, was inspired by a dream she had to create a microcosmic representation of the world. Her interactive installation features 1,000 suspended and mirrored orbs and invites viewers to gaze into a world within a world.
Thank you so much for coming to the Vilcek Foundation. This is the Senbazuru, which is the new installation.
My name is Toshiko Nishikawa. I was born in Japan, Yokohama. About 20 years ago, I moved to United States, and I've been in New York for 8 years now. I graduated Art University in Tokyo, Tama Art University. It's one of the top art university in Tokyo, and I received the Bachelor of Fine Art. Actually, my great-grandfather was an artist. And when I was 2 or 3 years old, he passed away. But I see the passion when he was painting. And also, I visited him just one day before he passed away. And at that moment, he was still painting with the mask for the oxygen. And that moment, I felt like I want to be an artist like him. So. Well, I've been working almost all the time the one thing, and it's not changing since I was small to now. I'm very interested in difference of a human being and also a beauty of human being. When I was in college, I was using oil painting and also I did lithograph and wood block, Japanese prints too. And after I graduate university, I used the pastels and acrylics. So I used so many different, Now I use this kind of like a mixing paint, which I created by myself, for especially that stays on the inside of those orbs. It's a special formulated paint. I draw all the lines with my hand for 1,000 orbs, and I use only one brush for these all lines. So the invisible wire connects each orbs, but also the one brush connects all of you. Because the vision first came to me, and then the vision showed me what kind of materials I need, and then usually I go to shop, and then I found the materials. So it just I don't decide the materials first. So I decide. The vision came first, and then I decide what kind of materials needs to create that kind of art. The title is Senbazuru. It's a beautiful culture from our country, and we make 1,000 crane origami and put together in a thread, and we dedicate for the people praying for the happiness or like a health. The first time I moved to Tribeca, 2005, I went to ground zero, and I felt it's very difficult to explain, but I had all the energies came through me, and then since that moment, I was thinking to make some art, and I've been thinking, and then just after 4 years, 2009, 3 o'clock in the morning, suddenly the vision came. So this is all the life, for me, this is all the life, all the energies. And we are all connected. And it's so beautiful. And that vision, well, it's meant to be. That's why it's now here. And I'm so glad people can see this, and I'm so glad I can see this too.
We hope you've enjoyed our special presentation featuring women in the arts. We encourage you to check out our featured artists' work by logging onto their websites or by visiting theartistsforum.org for more information. Stay tuned for our next special presentation coming soon. I'm Scottie Gage for the Artists Forum. Good night.
The Artists Forum. Get connected. Be heard. The Artists Forum is a place where artists of all disciplines can network, collaborate, and exchange information and ideas. You want to know when to catch us? Well, then log on to tvguide.com's local listing section. You can also see us live on the web via Channel 57's mnn.org. On the Artist Forum, you'll see interviews with New York City's emerging talents in theater, dance, and visual arts, as well as the written word. We'll jump the velvet rope to get interviews with the entertainment industry's top insiders, as well as some of its underground talents. Expose yourself to the Artist Forum, show us your work, invite us to your performance. Do you have questions about the business? Do you need help better focusing your career? Or maybe you just want to post information about an upcoming project? Well, log on to our website, theartistsforum.org. The Artist Forum, on the pulse of community activities and events. I'm Shalita Burchett, and I'll see you on the Artist Forum.
Hi, I'm Danny Simmons, artist and gallery owner.
Hi, I'm playwright Nancy Hasty.
This is Mukhtar Kokash from the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council.
We're artists Julie Martin
and Joe Martin,
and you're watching the Artist Forum.